Hello everyone. Welcome back into another video. I'm FranklinTurtz and I am your internet turtle. We are back with another video. It's a bit of a different video here today. We are live over on Twitch right now. I figured I'd start the stream by making an actual tier list. It's been a long heckin' time since I've made one of these. The last time I made one was for honor purposes. That was like maybe several years ago, and I do feel like I'm somewhat pretty knowledgeable with this game, plus my original knowledge from the Paragon days. So I thought it'd be a nice little change of pace to try to do a tier list for you guys. It makes it a little bit different for YouTube. But we're going to get started right here. First thing we got is Countess. Countess, I'm going to be putting, I think, in... I'm going to put her in A. So I'm going to probably, the way I'm going to break each of these down, I'm going to do like pros and cons for a bunch of them. Countess, big pro. Once she gets going, it's very hard to stop her. She is a very feast or famine character, and that's kind of a double-edged sword. She has to get ahead, where she is borderline useless within the game. She has to get those first few kills to get that passive going with the extra lifesteal. She has to get that damage going. She has to get her build going. If she doesn't, she really can't do much at all, and she doesn't really have much of an impact within the game. But once she has that impact, once she gets a little assistance from her teammates, she turns into an absolute monster. I actually debated making a suck tier and putting her in there, but that would have required an extra row and would have looked a little strange, but just wanted to explain that little joke to you guys as well. Yeah, she's pretty strong. She can definitely get invaded early. A lot of times you see her in the jungle. She can get invaded early. People that are really smart are able to kind of push her out of position. But if she's not invaded, she can steamroll pretty well. I'm not a big fan of putting her. I think her lanes technically in the game are like mid and jungle. I do think she's better in the jungle than mid, and it's mainly because, and it's going to be a recurring theme in this tier list, at least personally for me, I feel like a mid lane mage, like the quintessential mid lane mage, is someone that's going to have a lot of team fight viability and someone who has a lot of burst damage for that team fight. And Countess, being the magical assassin that she is, also being pretty short range other than that dash that she has, the shadow slip ability when she locks onto people. I don't really see her, at least, again, personally for me. Obviously, all tier lists have a little bit of bias, a little bit of opinion in them, so don't kill me, Countess mains. Please don't come for me. But I do see her better, definitely, in the jungle and the off lane, where 1v1s are a little more apparent, or like if she's ganking from the jungle purposes. Mid lane is tough for her. She gets poked out really easily by anybody that's pretty competent. You know, Gideon, Gadget, Belica, fucking even Morigesh could poke her out, potentially. Like, it's tough for her in the mid lane for sure. A skilled Countess could definitely dominate, but it's one of those characters that, like, I don't know, it's iffy at best in mid lane. But overall, I think that she has risen through the ranks. She used to be a lot worse, and now she's definitely gotten a lot better with her early game. Still not the best, but still pretty decent. But I'm going to leave her in A tier. We got Crunch next. I think I'm also going to put Crunch in A tier, but I'm gonna caveat this. So just as like a preface for all this, I am not a competitive, like, top of the line grandmaster player in this game. I have a lot of knowledge with the game. I'm very experienced with the game, also from my Paragon days, but I am by no means, you know, pro level predecessor player here. What does Crunch do well? Crunch is really good at boxing people. He's got a shit ton of CC, a lot of damage if you choose to do the double cleave route when you're fighting. He's really, really good at locking people down, isolating people down, and just outputting a lot of damage, and also getting a lot of lifesteal back. A lot of the time you build the Omni Vamp on him first. I forget the name of the item off the top of my head. It's the Red Axe item. I'm sure you guys will be able to leave it in the comments below. But he does the boxing, he does the actual fighting extremely, extremely well. Big bully in off lane, bullies a lot of the other potential off laners. Once he gets to level 6, especially once he unlocks that ultimate. Pre-level 6, he's kind of not the best, but he can go, he can get by. Now, the cons with him, he's one of those characters that's got a very massive hitbox, and so it's very easy to be able to hit him out of things, be able to kind of poke him out of lane. Crunch that is not very aggressive when he can be, and he knows that he can be, and just lets his opponent farm and poke him for free, is not going to be a Crunch that's going to get ahead in the game. But he is definitely somebody who can, for lack of a better term, fuck shit up. I think he's going to be pretty well overall in the meta. He is kind of weak to the people that are just, you know, for example, Steel. People that are just inherently tankier than him and also have a lot of CC. He gets eaten alive by CC, kind of like a lot of other characters here. CC is the name of the game. Crowd control, in case you guys are newer in the MOBA community, in the Predecessor community, stands for crowd control. It's a lot of different stuns, roots, stuff like that. And again, because he's such a big target, it's a lot easier to hit him with those types of CC. And so sometimes it can be hard for him to kind of get into a fight. But once he gets into the fight, he's able to isolate people down and really take the fight in his hands and lead his squad to victory in different team fights. Alright, next up we got Dekker here. I think we're going to put her in on... This is tough. I don't think I would put her... She's definitely not... I don't think she's S tier. I feel like I'm floating between A and B. I'll put her in A for now. The reason why I'm floating between the two tiers is she is a Swiss Army knife. She has a lot of different abilities that can kind of keep people stunned, keep your team alive, all that great kind of things that you want to support. The issue with that is that once she burns all of that, a lot of times you'll see Dekker kind of burn her entire kit on one engagement. Once all of that is on cooldown, if it doesn't work the way that she intends it to work, she can get dove very easily. She has the double jump, so she's able to kind of skirt the line just a little bit. But at the same time, I don't think like I said before, she's a Swiss Army knife. She's a jack of all trades, master of none, I guess is a good way to put it. She does a lot of things well, but she doesn't do any one thing super duper well. And so I feel like this would probably be the best place to put her. She's not a tank, so she can't tank hits all the time. She has a lot of CC, but it's not, you know, I don't know, Grux level CC or stuff like that. It's nothing insane, right? But she's obviously still very, very good, for sure. Drongo. Where are we putting Drongo? I mean, it's pretty easy, honestly. I'm not a big fan of carry, personally. It's my least played role, I'm pretty sure. I don't know what it is. I'm just not good at aiming with carries. But Drongo, as far as, like, from what I notice in the pro level, from, like, the few things that I've seen in pro level, as well as just my normal games throughout, you know, the entirety of my experience playing this game, he is one of those carries that hits really, really hard. Like a lot of the other, most of all the characters, or most of all the heroes in carry role do. But he also has the addition of the gag grenade, which is his basically silence that he could just throw out on a whim whenever he gets ganked and stuff like that. He's a very safe carry, probably one of the safest carries in the game. And he does a lot of really good things really, really well. He does, like I said, he does a lot of damage really well. He's able to keep himself kind of in the fight, keep himself safe. The gag grenade's going to help him take control, help his team take control of a fight. It'll literally silence. I've had multiple times even where, because it silences a character's entire, like, kit, and not just their abilities necessarily, you could actually throw the gas grenade. I've had it multiple times to me myself, that he'll throw it on Fang when we're trying to complete it. And because we're silenced, we can't use blink, we can't use abilities, we can't use blink, and we can't use hunt, which is the little dagger that you get when you're in the jungle to take out objectives faster. Because you can't use any of that, he could just steal it for free, potentially. So there's a lot of different ways to use that gas grenade, and a lot of different ways to use his kit to make him a little more of a standout carry than just, you know, point and click to get kills, right? He's got a lot more use in his kit than just that damage that he could do. Alright, Feng Mao. Also putting him in A. This is apparently just everybody in A today. Don't worry, we're going to get other people in different roles. Don't you worry. Feng Mao, I have a massive soft spot for this character. I hadn't played him much in the past, especially in Paragon. I've been playing him a lot more, especially the last, like, month or two. Especially in the solo lane. I played a bit in jungle as well, but especially in the off lane, the solo lane. He's one of those characters. He's an assassin, full-blown assassin. In Paragon, he used to be much more of a hybrid. He used to be, or at least be able to play a lot tankier, so that he was kind of a bit of both. I tried that in the early days of this game, like last year, and it's very apparent that that does not work well. If you do not build damage on him, he's not going to do his job of killing people. So what you just do is you just build him full assassin, basically. But the way that he plays, he does a lot of damage. He has to kite the people that he goes into. So he has a really good matchup in most of the other offlaners. For example, like Greystone, I'm pretty sure he beats Sevarog. He can beat Shinbi. Zarus, he can beat. There's a lot of offlaners that he can beat. But it's going to be dependent a lot on him kind of weaving in and out in the fight and kind of kiting his opponents. That's what he does really well. Essentially what he's going to do is he's going to jump in with the dash, do his hamstring, burst them a little bit, and then back off, especially with his shield that gives him move speed. And so while they're wasting abilities trying to hit him, he can back off and not take the damage. And you do that a few times over and over again, you're going to get to the point where you're able to actually just keep people on their toes and keep people low enough that he's going to be able to win the fight no matter what. Obviously, like, you know, he's an A. He's not, I don't think I'm going to put him in S tier. A lot of these characters, they have weaknesses that are apparent. And so I'm very negligent to put them in S tier necessarily. But I do think Feng Mao is definitely on the rise. And I do think it's definitely possible to potentially see him even go to S tier at some point. He's very, very strong in the right hands, and he does what he does very, very well. Oh, okay, Gadget. I will not be putting everyone in A tier. Shut up, chat. For example, Gadget. I will not be putting her in A tier. I'm putting her in B tier. So what does she do really well? She does poke extremely well. The hat that she has, as you can hear her say all of the time, that it gets very annoying sometimes. Have a hat. She'll throw that out, does a shit ton of poke, especially when you start leveling up to max. She's really good at controlling the battlefield with her ult, her slow, the root ability that she has. She's very she's kind of like what was I gonna say? Kind of like Drongo and a few other characters in this game in a way, where she's a little more technically based. You can kind of use her kit in multiple ways to keep people away from you, to lock people down, just do a whole shit ton of burst. She kind of can do it all in different ways. Where I think she's lacking is definitely in the early game. Her burst is not really there. Even her ult, like the ult does do a lot of damage, but they have to stay within the ult for it to have full effect. And a lot of the time, people are just going to walk right out of the ult. And so your ult is basically not going to be that great unless you're essentially dropping it when everybody's kind of clumped together. And you don't always, unfortunately, have that readily available in those team fights. But she does poke really well. She can do really well in the, especially like the mid to late game stages where she really does have that damage more readily available, especially with the hats, with the mines that she throws. But I don't think that she's A tier level. She gets ganked extremely easily a lot of the time if she doesn't have the root and the blink down, or if she doesn't have the root and the blink available. It's very easy for her to be ganked. She's one of those characters that it's not like Gideon, who's up next, who has that, you know, that blink in his kit, basically, that teleport readily available. She has to essentially run away, and people who don't have the ability to just dash out, you know, run away quicker, stuff like that, they're inherently going to be a little bit worse off, just because they're more susceptible to ganks and just, you know, fighting in general. Gideon. I'm putting Gideon. Ooh, do I put him in S? I don't know. That might be a little too spicy. He's definitely... Alright, I'll put him in A for now, and then as I talk, maybe I'll move him up to S. So, Gideon is the quintessential mage character. He does poke really well. He does team fights really well. His ult is god tier when it comes to fights. As far as... Unless he gets interrupted, obviously. But if he doesn't get interrupted, it's god tier in fights. You will easily get, you know, doubles, triples, quintuples, whatever you want to call them. He can do that extremely well. I don't really see him having a ton of weaknesses. Again, I think the ult, going back to that real quick, it's kind of a double-edged sword again, where, like, yes, it does really well in team fights, but if you're going up against, say, Dekker, for example, or, where is he? RIKTOR, for example, or Narbash, like, people who have a ranged stun, so she has her bubble, he's got the thunk, he's got the riplash, the hook that he has. If you're going up against someone who has a ranged stun, could be a big issue. You don't see a lot of Gideons ever since they nerfed True Silver Bracelet. In case you guys aren't familiar with that item, basically it's a ring that you could build on him that gives him a CC immune shield. If you break the shield, he is susceptible to CC, but if you don't break the shield, he basically just sits and ults for free. A lot of the time, people panic in the middle of a team fight, and they're not going to focus the Gideon down, and so he would have that shield in the olden days. And so if I was RIKTOR, for example, I'd try to riplash him, but it just wouldn't do enough damage. And so he would just remain up there doing his full damage ult to everybody involved. Now that True Silver's nerfed a lot, CC's even stronger against him. So it's kind of iffy. That's why I'm hesitant to put him in S. I think if they don't have a ranged stun, like I was saying earlier just now, I think he would be in S tier. But I think because these characters are so prevalent in the meta, Narbash, RIKTOR, Dekker, who else is there? Technically even Countess. Like, Countess could blink up to him with the Shadow Slip and ult him in the sky. I've seen that a few times, which is kind of nutty. But that'll technically interrupt the ult. Hell, even Silentium, if you guys know that item from the support crest, that won't interrupt his ult. There's a lot of different things that can interrupt his ult, but it is a game breaker when it does work well. So I'll leave him an A for now. Greystone. I used to think this character was S tier. Then I used to think the character was A tier for a while. Now that I've been playing Feng Mao a lot against a lot of Greystones, because Greystone is like the go-to offlaner, I feel like a lot of the time, I'm putting Greystone in B. Why? Alright, pros and cons again, chat. Pros and cons. What are the pros of Greystone? Very durable. Even if he does not build a shred, an instance of defensive properties, he will still be very hard to take down sometimes. He has a second life. He literally will come back to life with half of his health. Not to mention Phoenix, he could have a third life if he activates that. So you're essentially fighting him 3 times. It's really insane. But it's only insane if you fight him. He has no real lockdown. All he really has is some slows. Like, the ult is a really egregious slow. It's a really big slow. But if you have any sort of dash or blink or something, you can just get out of it for free. He has no, like, he doesn't have a stun. He doesn't have stuns like Crunch. He doesn't have roots. He doesn't have anything other than his slows. And so if a Greystone is running at you, a lot of the time people will literally just walk away from him. And so, and that's the whole thing with Greystone. Like, is he dangerous? At times, yes. If the team, his whole job, his whole reason for existence is for the enemy team to focus him. He literally will jump into a fight and will get in people's face so that people try to focus him and not the rest of his team. Because if you're wasting all your shit on Greystone, who literally has 2-3 lives potentially, then the rest of his team could come in and hit you when all of your stuff is down, right? And then he's just still kicking because he's got, you know, 1,000,000 lives like a fucking cat. But if you don't, you know, focus him down, if you get past him and you focus the other members of his team, there's not a ton that he's going to be able to do unless you're like super squishy and you can't get away from him. Like if you're a regular carry or something, maybe not Drongo, but because he's pretty safe. But someone like Sparrow, someone like the Fae, maybe people who don't really have escapes. He's really dangerous against them because he can run them down really effectively and kind of stick to them really effectively. But if you have any way, any hard CC will kind of stop him in his tracks. Hell, if he's chasing on Narbash, you could just thunk and run. Like, there's a lot of things that kind of keep him from being super good. And there's just taking in, you know, this taking in, like, all of the factors. If I was just to base Greystone around the fact that he can get in people's face and be annoying, then he'd probably be higher up. But I have to also look at the counterplay options to them. And for Greystone, there's a lot of different counterplay options to be able to kind of just ignore him. And if you're ignoring the Greystone, there's nothing, he's not doing his job effectively, right? Alright, so next up we got Grux.EXE, the Gruxussy. I think I'll put him... I want to put him A. I do. And I think I will. So, but here's the caveat. So, Grux is very, 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 very good in 1v1s. Very good in the off lane. Very good in the early game. They did nerf his early game recently. I believe the bleed is now nerfed by a little bit of damage. But he's still very good at being a bully early game in the off lane. And if the Grux bullies you enough, he's just going to naturally get ahead. And then at that point, it's going to be really hard to stop him until you get into, like, you know, the mid to end stages of the game where everybody starts ganging up on him. And that's kind of partially akin to his weakness. So he's very strong in the 1v1 fight. His ult basically just makes him immortal if he keeps whacking you. I've seen Grux's multiple times on, like, maybe not even one shred of health, 1 bar of health, and still whacking away and still staying alive because of the inherent Omnivamp that he gets from the inherent lifesteal, I should say, because not everybody knows what Omnivamp means. The inherent lifesteal that he gets from his ultimate. Where he lacks is if he's ganged up on, especially early game. A lot of the time, if I'm, for example, you know, Feng Mao, Crunch off lane, which I'm going to do in the first game tonight, because someone requested me to do that. Someone like that, who's versing Grux, if you have your jungler come over early game, and you gank him and he dies, he's really behind. He's really, really behind. Omnivamp is lifesteal, yes. But it's basically the same thing. But barring the gank situation, he is quite strong. And obviously solo lane most of the time is going to be 1v1. Unless you tell your jungler that you want to hard gank them a lot of the time. But Grux does suffer a shit ton from people ganging up on him. He does not really have peel for himself other than, like, his ult. His dash doesn't go that far at all. It's more of an engage than an actual, like, escape tool. In Paragon, he used to have a dash that would literally, like, he would fucking Naruto run, like, dash away. And they took that away really fast because it was too strong. But they made a little uppercut for him instead. He's one of those characters, kind of like Khaimera, who we'll get to here soon. That like once you're in the fight, you're in the fucking fight. So he doesn't really have a lot in the means of backing off, like Feng Mao or Gideon or even Drongo, Dekker, stuff like that. Like people like that can do that. So he really has to commit to things, and sometimes committing to things can lead to a death sentence, can lead to some not so great circumstances. Howie wowie zowie. I'm putting him in S tier. Also one of my favorite mid laners. Him and Belica are like my two favorite mid laners, and it's pretty funny because they're both, I'm pretty sure, S tier still. Howitzer has incredible poke. Once you get some damage on him, his ult will literally delete squishies. And it's very high up, so it's hard to interrupt unless you have like a ranged stun. I'm pretty sure Narbash stun doesn't go far enough, but a Dekker stun and maybe a Riplash from the RIKTOR can get him out of the ultimate, but most of the time that ultimate is going to go off, and if your Howitzer player is worth even half of his salt or half of their salt, they're going to be able to land most of the missiles from the ult, and it's going to immediately change the team fight in your favor, or even the 1v1 engagement, like on the other mid laner, for example. He can outpoke and outtrade almost any other mid laner in the game, if they're both of, you know, like equal skill level. And he's just really, really good. He doesn't have a ton of weaknesses, really. It's kind of why I put him, you know, in here with the little and no weaknesses. He is susceptible to ganks a little bit, but that's mainly because he doesn't really have a dash or anything. He's more of a technically based character, kind of like Drongo again, kind of like Dekker, where he could kind of use... He supplements not having a dash with the fact that he has mines. So his mine, what he can do is essentially, if he sees someone coming to him, he can put a mine at his feet and kind of boop them away. And then that kind of keeps him safe in that manner. But yeah, he's an amazing character. And I look forward to seeing more Howitzers in my games because he's always fun. I always love hearing the ult is ready. I'm sure you guys know the line. Alright, Kallari. Yikes. Where do I put Kallari? This is tough. I'm gonna float between C and garbage. I'm not gonna lie. So, to preface with Kallari, right? I'm just gonna throw her in B for now, but I'm not keeping her there. To preface with Kallari, I've seen some really nasty Kallari players. Like, some Kallari players will absolutely run your shit in games, but they are few and far between. They are fewer than fucking a blue moon on an eclipse at the same day. Like, it's very, very rare you see a really good Kallari, and she has to get ahead. She's kind of like Countess, where she has to get ahead in order to be effective at what she does. She is dangerous in the fact that she can basically just go invisible and pop out wherever at will and just do a bunch of burst. But she gets shut down very easily with one stun. One stun, one root, one lockdown CC, and she is going to get blown to smithereens unless she has her ult and blink out to get out of a situation pretty effectively, pretty quickly. Because of that, I'm probably going to put her in C tier as like a suboptimal specialist, kind of. Like, you have to be a Kallari one-trick, you have to be good at Kallari in order to do things with her. But the average person isn't going to be able to just say, hey, I'm going to play Kallari today. Because trust me, I've tried it. I tried Kallari one game, and people in chat know it went horribly wrong. It was very bad. She's a character that requires a very different way of playing, very different way of thinking. And she doesn't have any real CC other than slows. So that's another, like, ding on her character. CC is king in this game, after all. She literally just has invisibility and damage. That's about it. She can do some funny things where, like, she'll steal your red buff if she's close to you and then smites it before you smite it, like in your jungle. She can do sneaky stuff like that. She's a very sneaky character, as, you know, it's kind of the point with her invisibility and stuff. But I don't think, you know, she's not as effective in team fights. She's not as effective at ganking as some of these other characters. She can be strong, but is she strong most of the time? Probably not. Which is very different than Khaimera, who I will be putting in S tier. The only weakness that Khaimera has is that he's susceptible to CC. But a lot of the time, that can be mitigated if you're smart and you don't just W key with Khaimera. You guys know what I'm talking about, the Khaimera players that literally just jump on the first thing that they see. If you're W keying with Khaimera and you're not timing your cleanse well, if you're not building him tanky and you're just building him full damage, full assassin Khaimera, he's going to get blown up in team fights. Like, no matter how much regen you have, he's going to get blown to smithereens in team fights. But if you take your time a little bit, think about what fights you should go into and what fights you should back off from, what fights you could take and win, and you have a team that can kind of come in with him and help him out in fights, he will last for a long time in team fights. I, myself, do not build him full assassin at all. I will literally put Overlord on him, and then Berserker's Axe. I know Basilisk is pretty popular on him. I don't really use Basilisk. I find Berserker's Axe to be better because it just makes his ganks a lot better and his lockdown a lot better because you get the slow on the basic attack that follows up with his leap. And he also gets the speed bonus when you get out of the fog wall with Berserker's Axe. Basilisk is really good when you're actually whacking people, but you have to get to the person to whack them, right? And because his only real gap close is that jump, sometimes it can be hard to gap close on people because they have their dashes themselves. Like Gideon, for example, Feng Mao. 2 people that have blinks literally embedded in their kit, right? And so it's hard to really gank them because they're able to kind of just get out the second he jumps on them. So he's got to kind of be careful with who he jumps and what he does in those situations. But he's a great character for dueling, great character for brawling. Can take jungle camps very effectively, jungle objectives very effectively by himself. So I definitely think that he deserves... If I had to order these, which I'm not doing exactly, I'd probably put him below Howitzer as far as like actual good in the game. But I would still think that he's quite strong in the right hands for sure. Kira can be strong. I'm gonna put him in B. Kira can be strong. Her ult's pretty good. One of those characters that it's a channeled ult, right? So it's not just an instantaneous, like, you press a button and one thing happens. She spins around for a while, a la, what is his name? Reaper from Overwatch 2, basically. I think I made that joke in a predecessor video a while back, actually. But the ult is really good in a team fight if you don't get CC'd out of it. If you do get CC'd out of it, it's kind of bad news bears for her. But she has decent damage. She's one of those characters, one of those carries that actually does have a dash. But it's a little bit better than other dashes because she turns intangible, I believe. She, like, turns into a little Raven, kind of like Raven from Teen Titans. And she's able to kind of nope out of situations a little bit better that way. But she doesn't do anything like crazy good. Like Drongo probably beats her out in damage, like raw damage with the rad rounds. Murdock probably beats her out in raw damage. Fucking Sparrow probably beats her out in raw damage. But she's still like pretty decent at what she does. She's a carry. If she gets fed, she's going to work wonders for you. If she doesn't get fed, it's not going to work wonders for you. It's going to be bad news bears. Belica, S tier. She got nerfed a few times. Doesn't really matter. She's still quite strong. she's literally the anti-mage mage, and she wields that with very, very good effectiveness. I'm pretty sure Howitzer can technically beat her, but if the Howitzer misses some poke and she doesn't, it's going to be very easy for her to shut him down, especially with eating his mana away with the mana drone that she has. Team fight wise, again, the mana drone is pretty huge because it zaps a lot of people. You got abilities flying all over the fucking place. So that's really good for extra damage to pour on and also to drain their mana so they can't use as many abilities. The knock-up is really good. I mean, her one-shot potential is massive. The knock-up into Mana Bomb, into ult, when a person's even like maybe a quarter health down, will basically delete any mage who builds into mana at all. And even if you don't build into mana, it's still going to do a crap ton of damage. Even after they nerf the ult, too. I still think she's quite strong. I don't know if she needs more nerfs. I don't think she needs more nerfs necessarily, at least not to her damage, but maybe to her mana sustain, because I do still see her a lot of time in fights have a shit ton of mana, and so she could just keep doing what she's doing very well. It's not like, so Howitzer, for example, especially early to mid, loses a lot of mana when he's fighting, and so it's tough for him to sometimes keep up with fights. But Belica is very good at mana sustain, especially if she's not using the knock-up a lot. The knock-up is very mana intensive. If she's just using the mana bomb to clear waves and stuff, she has a crap ton of mana left over that she could use to fight with. But yeah, she's quite strong. Morigesh. It's not going to take long. So Morigesh, if you're a good Morigesh, like niche Morigesh, if you're a Morigesh main, good for you. Good for you. I'm proud of you. But I really don't see her being that effective overall. She has little to no wave clear. Her only real wave clear is the dash that she gets. I think it's called Swarm, where she speeds up and turns into a bunch of bugs. And she does have the Hive, but it doesn't really do too much damage in the early stages of the game. And even in mid-game, it still doesn't do like a crap ton of damage to minions. The Swarm is the main thing that clears minions. But what she really... So her whole kit, her whole character is designed around... kind of similar, I guess, to Feng Mao if I had to compare a character to her, and Countess, where they kind of go in, do their damage, and then back the fuck off. She's the same way. She's very short range in that she has to dash in, she has to hit people with the Mark and Hive combo, and then she has to back off. She can't take on sustained fights for too long. She gets locked down very easily. She has no real range at all, other than her ult, which isn't really technically range, because if you mark them, that's when they're going to get hit with the ult. It's not like she could just hit anybody at all with it at any given time. but she's a very suboptimal character for sure. She can do things. I've seen some crazy Morigesh plays, but in the grand scheme of things, any mid lane will probably beat her out. I've seen her in off lane sometimes too, but if you're even like remotely tanky, you could just kind of walk up to her and fuck her up. And even if she like pokes you out early game in the off lane, she has to use so much mana to poke you out that she's not going to have anything. If you have like a decent amount of health left and she has no mana, she can't do anything to you, right? So all you gotta do is just kind of burn her mana away, just rely on the fact that she does not really have wave clear, and just go to town on her. So I'm gonna keep her in the garbage tier. Throw Morigesh in the garbage here, folks. It's tough because I do like she intrigues me. I played her a bit like months ago. I tried her in off lane a bunch to the varying degrees of success, but it's just she really just doesn't do things as effectively as any of the other mages in the game. Murdock, I'm probably going to put in A tier. A lot of A tier characters, and this kind of shows that, like, the game overall, in my opinion, obviously, again, this is a tier list. This is my personal opinion. There's a little bit of bias in here, but I do feel that the game is overall pretty balanced. And that's kind of shows in this bell curve that we have going, where a lot of characters are in, like, the A to B tiers. That's kind of what you want in a game like this that has multiple different characters with different kits. But yeah, real quick with Murdock, I mean, really solid peel. He's got the knockback on the shotgun. Really strong damage output that he can have. His passive allows him to hit further away, so he can poke people from range even farther. The Kamehameha ult that he has, the Long Arm of the Law, can secure a lot of different kills. What else does he got? The traps. If you can actually, like, if you're a really good Murdock player, I encountered one of these the other day, he could actually kite people around his traps and just keep poking them when someone like Grux or somebody tries to go, Khaimera even, tries to go in on him. He could just kind of sit around the trap, and then once they get trapped, he can push them back with the shotgun and just keep kind of self-peeling for himself and keep outputting the damage that he has. But yeah, there's not much to say about him. He's just a really good carry, really strong damage. Muriel. Tox, you're gonna hate me for this one, buddy. B tier. I'm putting her in B tier only because, so what she does really well is keep people in the fight. She's really good at shielding, especially her ult. She can do things very aggressively, which is kind of counterintuitive to how a lot of people play her, where you shield people when they're in trouble. If Muriel shields them aggressively when you're trading with them, if she trades people herself with the damage that she outputs early game especially, she can really turn the tide early game. Where she's lacking is she doesn't really have any hard CC other than the ultimate, and that's about it. Like, it has the knock-up, and that's essentially it that she has as far as hard CC. And again, like I said, like, CC dominates this game. If you have really good CC, then you're going to be doing a lot better than people who don't have CC. Like Greystone, for example, I would much rather have a game, if I had to choose between Crunch and Greystone, I'd probably choose the Crunch. Simply because, if they're of equal skill level, obviously. Simply because the Crunch has much more CC than Greystone has. Or, I don't know, Belica over Gadget, simply because she has more CC. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the knock-up is better than the root that she has. Stuff like that. CC is king in this game. Muriel can be very good. I'm not discounting that. There are plenty of games where I'm very, very glad we had a Muriel. Again, looking at you, buddy. Toxic. But, if I had to choose between Muriel and maybe another support like Dekker, like Belica, who else we got? Steel, even Argus, FaZe. Like, there's a lot of other characters that have better forms of CC that I think will kind of outbeat her as far as being able to lock people down. Because at the end of the day, all the shields in the world aren't going to matter if you're locked out of your moves, right? If you're locked down and not able to move. So. Alright, next up we got the Narby. The Narby. I'm putting Narby in A. So Narbash is a very, very good support. He's very good at what he does as far as peeling for this team, engaging for the team. The Thunk is very unilaterally good for starting engagements and for disengaging and for interrupting things. Like I said with the Gideon ult. On other like quintessential channeled ults, Kira ult, he could just walk up and thunk her and boom, there's your ult, it's gone. Yeah, he's just very good at kind of keeping his team alive, keeping his team in the fight. And being able to kind of move them around and control the battlefield a bit. The ult's really nice, too, to slow things down a bit. The Crash Bang Boom. But the Double-Edged Sword with the Crash Bang Boom. And just Narbash in general. He's another one of those characters that's very big. And I know I didn't mention this about, like, Grux, Greystone. Greystone's not that big. But characters that are really big, Howitzer is another character that's really big. Anybody with a wider hitbox, and a lot of time you don't hear this all the time with tier lists, I feel like, from what I've seen anyway so far. But people that have wider hitboxes inherently aren't going to be as good as they could be, because the bigger your hitbox is, the easier it is for people to hit you, the easier it is for people to poke you out, to interrupt you, all that good stuff. So, yes, he could be very good, but I would rather have a RIKTOR. Like, RIKTOR into Narbash. RIKTOR will completely dominate Narbash unless he builds True Silver Bracelet. And even with the True Silver Bracelet, if he gets shredded down, he gets interrupted very easily. It's another one of those channeled ults with the Crash Bang Boom. All RIKTOR has to do is walk up and use one of his, like 3 different CC options to knock Narbash out of his ult permanently. And then the Narbash just kind of sits there and dies, right? Because he's kind of sitting in the middle of the team fight when he's using the Crash Bang Boom. So he's one of those characters that's very susceptible to getting interrupted by other characters, and that's what kind of holds him back from S tier, at least for me. But he is really good at being aggressive early game and keeping people in the fight early game. You think you're going to kill people, but because of the heal, a lot of the time, they stay alive, and then you end up dying, whether it's from minion aggro in the middle of the fight, or just the raw damage of your opponents. It's still a very good support, for sure. Phase... So Phase can be really good in certain situations, like when she's hooked up to Khaimera especially, will just literally shred people down, and will make Khaimera feel fucking invincible. But she's, again, another one of those characters, so she has the root. The root is really good, the long-range Kamehameha, I forget what it's called exactly, I think it's called Energy Lance, into the root. Very good for setting up potential fight scenarios. Oh, I don't know what just happened there. The screen just went blank for a second. The tier list itself doesn't like my picks, apparently, guys. But she's really good at the engaging aspect of things, and she can sometimes peel people away. But again, she's another one of those characters that her main tool, which is the lance and the pull. The pull is really good. I'll go on a tangent here. The pull is really good. If you have a good phase and she stays towards the back of team fights, she's very, very good for pulling people out of danger. Especially people like Khaimera, people like Feng Mao, people like Grux, people that are like Crunch, that get in people's faces and do a heck ton of damage, but might not necessarily have a way out. She's really good at providing that way out. But the Energy Lance is also a channeled ability, and again, because of channeled abilities, it's susceptible to being interrupted by multiple stuns. We factor RIKTOR in again. I'm going to foreshadow RIKTOR. I'm putting in S tier. He is my main. I'm very biased, but also it's true. He's very, very good and probably the best support in the game right now. At least as far as tank supports go, like melee supports. She's very susceptible to getting interrupted from that Energy Lance. Very susceptible to getting ganked. She doesn't really have any peel for herself other than maybe the blind. If you get ganked, she can I don't know what you call it. Psychic Flare, I think it's called. I don't know how I'm remembering these all of a sudden. I'm not swimming here. This is her doing the Psychic Flare. She could flare people and then be able to kind of walk out of the situation a little bit, but a smart person will kind of just W key forward on her and be able to somewhat track her down. Especially if you have damage going off on her, you could actually track her. Your screen doesn't turn completely dark. It only turns black, but the damage numbers are still up. And so if you're smart, you could actually track. And I do this with Khaimera a lot when I'm ganking phase. When I'm whacking her, I can still see the damage numbers popping up, and so you can kind of roughly figure out where she's going, just based off of where the damage numbers are going. But it's iffy. It's iffy for her. She could do really good. She could do really good in fights. She can keep people alive, especially when you don't think they'll be alive. But if you focus her down, it's much like Muriel. Like, if you're focusing the Muriel down, she's not going to be able to shield, you know, her Drongo or her Murdock, for example, because you're not going on them. Why would you go on them when the Muriel's just going to keep them alive with the shields, right? You go for the support, no more shielding. You go for the support with phase, no more Energy Lance, no more pull to get them out of danger. So it's one of those situations where these are more, I would, like, if it's a Dekker, for example, I'm not going for the Dekker. I'm going for the Muriel or the phase, because they empower their allies a lot more than a Dekker does. A Dekker is good for controlling the fight. They're really good for keeping people in the fight. So if you lock them down, if you take them out of the fight, then the entire team of theirs is going to be weaker for it. Rampage. I will put Rampage in A. He is very tanky in the jungle. We received some buffs recently. Maybe not this past patch, but I think the patch before that, or maybe the patch even before that. Recent patches, basically. He's been buffed. I don't think he's the best jungler, but he's pretty high up there. I do think Khaimera still beats him out, just as far as utility is concerned. Rampage is really good at just getting in there, turning massive, being beefy, and kind of just taking a lot of damage. But the issue with Rampage, and I see this a lot of time with Rampage, is he's overly reliant on health regen. And if you're building Tainted and doing a lot of bursts to him, that regen is going to mean jack shit. And so even if you see a Rampage, if you see him waddling his way towards you with a whole shit ton of health regen, you can still technically burst him down if you focus him quick enough. And then without the Rampage, a lot of the time when a Rampage is in their enemy team, or in a team comp, he's like their only tank most of the time. And so if you're taking out the tank, all they have left is squishies, and then you just dive the squishies one at a time, right? Thank you for that ban, by the way. But yeah, I mean, not much to say. His clear is really good. His invade's really good. Everything about him is quite solid. It's just in the team fight, sometimes he can be a little lacking. Because he's such, and this goes back to what I said earlier, right, guys? If you have a really wide hitbox, if you're somebody who gets targeted a lot in these team fights, and when he uses his ult, he literally takes up your whole entire screen. So it's pretty hard to miss him. So it's pretty easy to hit him and kill him if your team is really apparent on focusing him. And then once he's off the battlefield, the rest of his team is kind of like shooting fish in a barrel, basically. Rev, I don't got a lot to say about Rev. Now, personally, I love Rev. He's my favorite carry. He's one of the only carries I do really well with. Leaving that on the doorstep, leaving that at the table, he has little to no wave clear. All he really has is his 4 shots, and then he has to reload, and then he vomits on people with his, like, red missile thing. I forget what it's called exactly. But he really has next to no wave clear. I'm pretty sure even Morigesh has better wave clear than Rev, which is really saying something, because she has crappy wave clear. But he definitely is probably one of the weakest characters in the game right now. I don't know what they can do. Probably maybe give him some type of extra wave clear. Maybe if there's only minions around, give him more missiles or more burst on, I don't know, something or other. But he does need some help as far as, because he's always going to be out-cleared as far as the lane is concerned. He's always going to be pushed to his tower. He's always going to have that pressure on him. Can he do things late game, like mid to late game, especially if he gets ahead? Oh, for sure. Shot for shot, he will out-damage any carry in here, right? Because of just how he works with the crits and whatnot, and just raw power that you build on him. But because of the way that he works, again, double-edged sword, he probably gets beaten out by most of the carries because they could just shoot faster than him, because they have more utility than him. It's tough out here for Rev. It's tough out here for the Wild West demon boy. But hopefully he gets some sort of buff in the future for him to at least contend a little bit more with these other characters. Because I do love him a lot. I really like his style. And I hope for him to be better in the future. Oh, no. Alright, you know what? No. I'm a RIKTOR main. This is the one time where I'm going to reorder the actual, like, tier. I'm putting RIKTOR at the very top. I love RIKTOR. Very rare that this character disappoints me. Even if I lose a game, I always feel like I'm very impactful with the RIKTOR. He's a character that's very dependent on his ability, though, especially his Riplash. If you miss your Riplashes all the time, you're probably going to be all the way down here. If you don't miss your Riplashes all the time, even if you hit like maybe 45 to 50% of your Riplashes, especially the ones that are really going to matter, like the team fight ones against the Gideon ult and stuff like that, the Howitzer ult, he's going to be god tier. He's going to completely swing the fight in your favor to be able to literally pull someone out of position towards your team, towards himself, and lock them down with the silence, lock them down with the ult. Extremely durable, extremely tanky character. You can literally build him raw tank. I used to build him like supporty as a support. I literally just build him as a tank now in the support role even. And it works wonders. He's just so beefy, especially with that passive overshield that he gets. Doesn't really lose a lot of matchups. I used to play him in the off lane a lot, and I still do from time to time. Because again, he's just so beefy, he can trade with a lot of these characters really well. As long as you don't get like in long extended fights with them. The short trades are what really deem him better. And then he could just outlast in the longer trades afterwards. But he's a very strong character. And he's somebody that has been dominant in the meta for a long time now. And I really hope they don't nerf... Maybe he gets a small nerf, but I hope they don't nerf him too much in the future. Because I really do like what he does. And I like that his skill shot is what makes him such a good character. Serath, I've been seeing more Serath lately. I'm gonna put her in B for now. Nah, she's not Kallari level. Nah, I'll put her in B for now. So she's solid at what she does. She's very good at bursting people down, especially in her ultimate. If you're tanky, she could shred you pretty well. And I've seen her a lot more in the off lane now than in the jungle. I haven't been seeing her in jungle as much lately, but she still does decently in jungle. She's another character that suffers from, she has really good engage, she has really good disengage, really good damage, but she doesn't have a hard CC. She's another one of those characters that does not, like Muriel, like Kira, like Greystone, a lot of characters that are down here that don't have hard CC. She only really has the slow from the wing beat that she has, and where she shines as well is in offlane with the trading. She has the ability that allows you to essentially disappear and whack people a few times, and then reappear and do more damage. So she's kind of able to use that invulnerability to maneuver around and like, for example, if you're fighting a Grux in offlane, right? If you time it where he's trying to do his engage or his knock up or pull, something like that, and you dodge that with your whackety whack, your ghost whack thing. I don't know the name of it, but you guys will know if you're Serath mains out there. She's able to do that and essentially keep doing it to dodge key abilities. She will win the fight 9 times out of 10. So it's another one of those skill-based things that she has to kind of time it really well. You don't really see her full assassin anymore. You do see her more bruiser style with Overlord and stuff like that to give her a lot of health. But she does what she does pretty decently. Nobody that's like, you know, it's going to be one of those things where she gets really far ahead. She's very, very terrifying, very scary. She will delete entire lobbies. But she doesn't have that hard CC to like get ahead as easily as other characters can. Like Grux or like Khaimera, it's the Crunch, something like that. So I'll keep her in B for now. I will say, she's very annoying, very annoying. In Paragon, that ability used to be, she would be rooted at the spot, and just at a distance she would hit people, and that was sort of like invulnerability when she first activated the ability. Now it's much more annoying that she sticks to you and you can't even hit her out of it or anything. I hate that ability. But that's just my personal bias. Alright, Sevarog. So Sevarog is very interesting. I'm putting him in Specialist. Mainly because his early game is god-awful. If you're even halfway decent at the game, you know that you could trade with Sevarog and probably bully him out of lane. You don't really see him in jungle too much anymore. Most of the time it's off lane because you can stack easier. The stacks are really what make or break this character. He has to get those stacks to be fully viable in the mid to late stages of the game. So if you're poking him out of lane early all the time and he's getting ganked early, he's never going to be useful with your games. But if you're able to actually get your stacks, if you're able to play pretty effectively, pretty safely, and get those stacks going as quickly as possible, he can easily scale up to an S tier threat. He is the tankiest guy in the game if he gets to that point, but he has to get to that point to be that effective. And more often than not, in a lot of games, you'll see Sevarogs getting shat on because it just takes him a while to get going. Very, very slow on the upkeep. But somebody that I definitely am interested in, and I do want to play more, because he's just so unique in his abilities and the way that he kind of gets to that point of being tankier and being a viable threat. Shinbi. I think I'm also going to put Shinbi in B. Really strong at bursting people down, really strong at somewhat sticking to people. She's one of those characters who doesn't have hard CC, but because of her dash, kind of like Feng Mao, who doesn't have hard CC, if you build them with really low cooldowns, she can literally like get onto people, spam all of her abilities, and then as soon as they're getting away, she has the double dash to stick to them and keep hitting them with their abilities and stacking up that ultimate for the big finale. And she's very good at being able to kind of bob in and out, weave in and out, like Serath, like Countess, Feng Mao. She's able to kind of take fights at her leisure, burst people down if she wants to. She builds a lot of lifesteal, and she's able to just kind of harass and annoy people, especially like Shinbi into Sevarog. Could go either way, honestly, depending on if ganks happen, depending on who gets more last hits, stuff like that. Who lands their abilities more. If Shinbi's smart, she could just keep poking the Sevarog with her Lion Wolf and not like take long trades with him. She's another short trade character like Feng Mao, who's able to kind of go in, do the damage that she wants to do, and then back off before they really start like getting, because it theoretically, if the Sevarog sticks to her for a while, right? If Sevarog and her are fighting for a while, Sevarog has so much health, and he'll build like Fire Blossom, stuff like that, the damage that'll radiate from him, that it'll just slowly microwave her to death. But because she's taking short trades, that microwave never really happens, and he's never able to really stick to her for long periods of time. So if she's able to effectively take those short trades, she will win a lot of her matchups. Steel! Steel's going in A. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's universally well known that Steel is one of the tankiest motherfuckers in the game, and one of the best CC initiators and disengagers in the game. He's got 3 stuns, essentially, 1 knockup, 2 actual stuns. No, actually, 2 knockups, right? Yeah, because the ult's technically a knockup, but it's basically a stun. You can literally follow it up with all your other stuns and just CC chain lock them down for a good, like, 5 million years. And then that'll allow your team to engage on them pretty effectively. Very hard to kill a steal. Kind of like Greystone in a way, where if you build him tanky, it's very hard to really do any lasting damage on him before he actually damages you more, just from how the sheer health difference, because he gets those shields on the different abilities that he throws as well. He's a character that's always going to be strong until they, like, if they nerfed him heavily, he'd probably go no lower than B. Right now, I would say A, though. Really solid in jungle, but much better in offlane and support. But I do love me a good mean steal jungle. Faye! I love Faye. Faye is so good. The only thing that holds her back, honestly, is the fact that she does not really have an escape. She's kind of like, I almost said Dekker. She's kind of like Gadget in that way, where she's kind of just floating around. At least Dekker, oh my god. Probably the same character. At least Gadget has the gate that allows her to move faster. However, Faye has none of that. She has a little bit of peel with the ult and the bramble patch, which is like the big brambles that she spawns on the ground that makes people super duper slow. But other than that, she has no real way to dash out, no real way to disengage fights effectively. She's very easy gank fodder early game. But she more than makes up for it in her team fight viability. A fail on 2 or 3 members of the enemy team is basically the enemy team dying right then and there. Because once she does that, she can just drop all the rest of her kit. And then hopefully other members of her team are there as well. And they just easily get 3 kills. And then you go get an objective. Then you go get, you know, a tower or something like that, right? So she's very, very strong offensively. Defensively, not that great. So I think that holds her back from S tier for sure. But still very, very worth your time, I would think. Twinblast, the wisecracker himself. 2 guns, 1 guy. Don't look too much into that. Probably the best carry in the game. He just does everything so well. His poke is really good. His trades are really good. His disengage and engage are both really, really good. He farms really fast because of the way his guns work, where he just basically shoots 2 bullets for every 1 bullet that someone shoots. No real downsides to him. Yeah, he could probably get ganked a little bit. His dash isn't like super far or anything. So I know we're gonna be doing the game soon. Don't worry, we're almost done. We're almost done. We're getting to the end here. But yeah, I think he's solid. I think he's really, really good. Doesn't really have any sort of weaknesses to him, and somebody that I always am happy to see in my draft for sure. Zarus, I'm probably gonna put. So I originally thought this character was not that great, like when he first came out, and he's been buffed here and there. I kind of want to put him in A. I'm like floating between A and B here. I think I'll put him in A for now, simply because he's really solid in the 1v1 and offlane. Again, one of those characters that like will weave in and out, taking those short trades. He gets a really short cooldown on the lance that he has to poke people out. And his ult is really, really good for starting team fights. So if you ult with a Zarus and the enemy team doesn't have a dash or a blink or something, you could come in with like a Howie ult, you could come in with like a Gadget ult, Grux ult, Gideon ult, like any of those big team fight ults. Faye ult, for example. He's really good at kind of caging people in and starting a fight up that way. And I do think that for that team fight viability, he's really, really strong in that. Defensively solid too. He does get the health regen when he backs off. I don't really play Zarus. I've played him maybe once in my life, if that, just to see how his kit works a little bit. But I do know he gets health regen based off his stacks, like off his passive. So he can essentially go in, do a bunch of damage to, like, I don't know, a Grux or something when they're fighting in off lane, and back off and get his health up. And so he could kind of trade that way over time pretty effectively. But I really, really like him for the ult. I see him playing in jungle a lot too. I'm not the biggest fan of him playing in jungle, again, because he doesn't have, you know, 3 forms of CC like Grux, 3 forms of CC like RIKTOR, 2 CCs with Khaimera. Like, he doesn't have as much CC that you would like in a jungler, ideally. I like my junglers with more crowd control, because it locks them down further. But he is somebody that is able to kind of supplement that with the team fight viability of his ultimate. Ooh, Sparrow. Hot topic, because she's been played a lot more lately. But I'm putting her in C tier. So I will not deny, towards the end game, Sparrow is probably the hardest hitting carry in the game. But she is so dependent on her teammates for peeling for her. If you get on a Sparrow and her teammates don't peel for her, she is dead. She is dead. I don't want to hear it, buddy. Feng Mao jungle is great. He also just bursts better than Zarus, to be fair. He's like a full-on assassin with cooldowns. But yeah, back to Sparrow. Sparrow, I think, is really, really good on herself. Like, in the 1v1, technically. Like, if it's carry versus carry, I feel like she could probably beat most carries if there are similar levels and similar builds and farm. Because just of how her raw damage works. However, she has no dash. She has no CC to get her out of a fight. No peel for herself. She has maybe the slow on her arrows, like her arrow rain. That's literally about it. That's all she has. So if you get on her, like with a Khaimera, for example, Khaimera will eat her alive. You get on her with a Sevarog, what's she gonna do? You get on her with a Grux, Rampage, Feng Mao, Crunch, Greystone, Shinbi. Like, all of these characters can just get on top of her and destroy her. Can she do a lot of damage if she's like way ahead of them? Yeah, she could probably kill them. She could probably take them out before they kill her, especially if she builds some lifesteal. But is that going to work most of the time? Probably not. It's tough because like Sparrow's cool. I like the simplicity of her kit. I like that they buffed her to the point where she's doing even more damage. But she is the quintessential pick for a glass cannon, like hard late game carry, who will destroy late game, especially with her ultimate in team fights, if you keep her safe and you keep her in the back. And we're gonna get somebody here, the new boy on the block, two new boys on the block, who's kind of similar to her but different in a way. But she's one of those characters that's really over reliant on her teammates to peel for her, and so that's what kind of holds her back, at least for me, for being in the same tier as like Drongo or Twinblast, or just characters that are more self-reliant. You know what I mean? All right, Wraith. I think I'm also gonna put Wraith in C tier on it now. Yeah, I'm going to put Wraith in C tier, simply because you have to be a really good Wraith to do well with him. I am a horrible Wraith. I'm pretty sure my win rate on him is like 47% or something. It's terrible. You have to land those snipes consistently. You have to land those not mines, the grenade consistently before you do the snipe. He has to land everything he does to do really, really well. And even then, he still suffers. Like, if you play him in mid, for example, remember what I said earlier about going back to me preferring team fight ults, like from mages in mid lane, rather than, you know, assassin ults, for example, or like assassin moves. He's a very single target character. Yes, he can dominate. Yes, he can do a lot of damage. But in those team fights, how much is he going to really be doing other than just kind of picking people off here and there, right? Like Gideon, if he gets into a team fight, you have his ultimate, barring, you know, a RIKTOR or someone else that could stun him or Silentium or something, barring some way to interrupt his ult, you're going to get much more bang for your buck with a Gideon, with a Gadget, with a lot of these other characters, the Fae, that have those big, wide team fight ults, than a Wraith who's just going to walk up and snipe one person, right? Yeah, I think if you're a really good Wraith main, go for it. Go dominate your lobbies. I'm proud of you. I could never do it. Maybe someone will show me sometime. Next we got Iggy, and this is probably going to be the spiciest take, the hottest take that I have. A lot of people put him in the lower tiers because of how he works, but I'm going to actually put him in A tier. And here's my point for Iggy in A tier. Here's my point for Iggy. Does he have a big team fight ultimate? Not necessarily. Does he have a lot of burst? Not necessarily. What he does have, first of all, he plays very differently from the other characters in the game. He is not a burst mage. He is not somebody who has an escape or an engage, really. What he does have is just the sheer annoyance and damage over time within, like, baked into his kit, for lack of a better term. Fire pun? He is able to control zones really well. I actually don't really play him much in mid, just because, again, like, I'd rather have a bursty mage in mid, teamfight mage in mid. I actually play him a lot in off lane, and a few of my friends as well play him in off lane too. He's actually quite effective in off lane as long as he keeps his distance from people, because he can constantly land Molotovs on enemies. And one Molotov isn't going to do too much to the enemy, but, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 or 9 or 12, because they don't cost a lot of mana, they're going to start piling up. They're going to start hurting. And once that melee person inevitably pushes up the lane, he can start going in on them with his turrets. He starts setting up a kill zone around himself, and he can literally just start burning them to death. He's very, very good at what he does, which is area denial and pushing objectives. He is probably the best mage for securing objectives because of the way his turrets work. It's pretty easy for him to, maybe not solo like Mini Prime or Fang, but he can do a lot of damage to them just by himself and maybe one other person. They can take it pretty quickly. but he's one of those characters that you have to play a little bit differently with him, where he is basically only a split pusher and someone who is going to set up for different things. He's good at 1v1ing, again, as long as you keep your distance and have your turrets set up effectively. If you put all your turrets like right in a row, and the melee person like a Grux just comes up and whacks them all, you're not going to be that effective. But if you put like, you know, one behind you, you put like one to the left, you put one all the way to the right, and they're all targeting the Grux as you're hitting him, he's going to get burned down pretty effectively. So I think I will leave him an A. Again, that's probably the hottest take I could ever give you guys. But I do really enjoy Iggy, and he is one of the people I did get my prestige skin on him. I do really like how he plays and what he does for the team. What he lacks in that team fight availability, because he just can't gank really effectively. He more than makes up for in the split push. And he can technically, if you're set up in a zone, like if you're set up at Prime or something and you're taking Prime, and the enemy team comes in and all the shit is set up, he's going to burn people alive. You guys win that team fight automatically just because you're essentially fighting 8 people, right? You have 5 people to a team, and then you got to plus his 3 turrets. You're essentially fighting 8 people. So it's kind of nutty. Maybe like 7.5. The turns aren't that crazy, but you know what I mean. Like, it's just an automatic advantage for that team. Alright, Kwangarang. We're gonna put Kwang in. So he was S tier for a while. Then they nerfed him a bit. It's like the longest A tier of anybody's life. I'm gonna break the record for Predecessor tier lists. This is my first one for having the longest A tier of anybody. But I think it's just because a lot of these characters do things really, really effectively. They all have a few weaknesses here and there, but overall, very, very strong. Kwang, really good in the short trades. Not so much in the long trades. The Light from the Heavens, the lightning bolt that he gets the shield from, really, really good into basically any other offlaner. He can duel Zarus and win. He could duel Steel, I'm not so sure, actually. But Grux he could duel and win, Feng Mao duel and win, Crunch duel and win. But if he gets CC'd down, like with a Crunch, with a Grux, stuff like that, it could be difficult for him. So that's why I mentioned the short trade. You go in, you do your Light from the Heavens, and then you get the fuck out, right? Maybe hit him with a few basics if they have their stuff on cooldown. You do have your, what do you call it? Your sword, your tether. The tether is really, really good. The combo with him is really good as well if you do your full combo, which is the tether into the dash for the knock up into the blade, into the ult, and then the Light from the Heavens to make you tanky in the fight. It's a lot of burst. You can build him Magical Assassin, like if you build him in the jungle or something, but I wouldn't really advise it. He's much better as like a bruiser brawler kind of guy, much better as a tank. So he got to get in there and just be kind of a beat stick for people to focus down so that the rest of your team can come in. That tether is really, really good for locking people down, though. It's a very unique CC. It's not a stun. It's not like a root. It's something completely different, where they're basically stuck to the blade, and you're able to kind of lock them there in that position for a while to have your team follow up on them. But yeah, he's quite strong. Not necessarily S tier anymore, but still somebody that I think you could definitely win a lot of your games in the off lane with. Alright, we got the last 2 newbies here. Argus go into S tier. I'm pretty sure you guys knew this was coming if you've seen any other tier list for Predecessor. God tier levels of CC, God tier levels of damage. Not necessarily like super bursty damage, but damage over time. But early game, especially as a support, burst damage for sure. A lot of damage comes from this guy. He's a very, very annoying, very aggressive support that is able to constantly harass the duo lane. I do think he's much better in the duo lane than as a support than in the mid lane. Because again, mid lane overall is much more about team fight ults, much more about raw burst damage. And he just doesn't have that raw burst damage all the time. But he's very good at harassing people down. He's a much more like technical character with the CC and lockdown that he has available. But especially in the early game, he's really annoying in solo lane. And if I had to base this on, or not solo lane, duo lane. But if I had to base this if he was just a mid laner, I'd probably put him in A. Oh my god, poor A. A tier's getting double. Oh my god. If I had to base it solely on mid lane, I'd put him in A tier, simply because he is a little weaker there. He doesn't have all that burst. He still has the CC, but the burst, he can't really follow up on the burst too long. It takes a while for his right click to get going, and he's very, very mana dependent. Belica destroys him in the mid lane, and that's why when he first came out, I wasn't necessarily agreeing he was S tier. Now I definitely would put him in S tier, but definitely, like, if I had to order them, I would put Belica, like, above him for sure. Right? She is the anti-Argus character, because he's already using a shit ton of his mana, and if she gets 1 mana drone up, or 2 mana drones up, he is all out of mana, and then what is he going to do realistically to you, right? And then she just will go in and abuse him. I've had it happen multiple times, where I'm just bobbing and weaving, he misses just, like, maybe 1 or 2 key abilities, and then he's basically all out of mana. I walk up, I knock him up, I hit him with a mana bomb, I ult, he's dead. Simple as that. He's very, very strong, especially in support, not so much in mid. Gets eaten alive by Belica, but still very good at what he does. And then last but not least, we have the newest boys on the block, Grim.EXE. I'm going to put, so they're very interesting, right? So on one hand, Grim is, I'm going to put them in B tier for now, I'll tell you why. But I'm not so sure about this, I might change it as I talk. On one hand, Grim is very good. We'll do pros and cons again, like we've been doing for a lot of characters here tonight. His pros. A lot of damage, a lot of control. He's a very technically based carry. Kind of, sort of, maybe similar-ish to Drongo if I had to compare the two. He's got the knockback, like the radiating bomb that he can launch out. He's got the slow on his basic attacks that do a fuck ton of damage. The ultimate is really good for securing kills. I also really like that he's unique in that you don't have to build him like a normal carry. You could build him like a full like mid laner magical based character and still do really well with him just because of the way that his character and his design works, that everything's magically based. He does really do obviously really well with attack speed, but at the same time you could just build him more into that magical bursty type of character and make his ult do wild amounts of damage. But the issue, and why I'm not putting him, you know, higher in A, definitely not S tier at all, but the issue with him, which is the big issue with Sparrow, which is why I'm kind of flirting with keeping him in B and C, is because he's another character, so he has a very wide hitbox. Remember what I said before multiple times? The bigger your hitbox is, the more susceptible you are to getting ganked, to getting CC locked, all that kind of stuff. Hitbox is not something that everybody like will necessarily talk about all the time, but it is something that you have to think about in this game. Because of the way that the game works with how you aim your abilities and stuff, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. It's as simple as that. He does have his shield to cleanse one ability, like 1 CC. But, like for example, if a RIKTOR hooks you, if you time it right, you could just ignore the hook. But the hook is always going to be off cooldown faster than your shield is going to be off cooldown. Especially if the RIKTOR builds cooldown, which most of the time you don't see Grim building. And so that shield's probably going to always be, like 9 times out of 10 I would say, that shield's always going to be on more of a cooldown than the RIKTOR hook. And so you can't always rely on the shield to stop that CC. And more often than not, you know, 1 CC isn't going to be the only thing that you have to worry about, because you got, you know, 4 other members of the enemy team to worry about if they have any CC. But Grim's an interesting one. We're going to have to keep an eye on him. I'll keep him in B for now. I think in the right hands, he can do nasty damage. I got my buddy that is really, really good with him. I have a few friends that are good with him too. We're getting better with him. But I'm not fully convinced yet that he is going to be able to kind of play with the big boys, so to speak. I do like having him here with Kira, because like what he does well, but what he doesn't do very well. He's very susceptible to certain things. He's very over reliant on his team to peel for him. He has a little bit of peel for himself with that boop, with that grenade thing. Other than that, not really much, to be honest. Exactly, you will be under your tower almost the entirety of the game for sure. But yeah, that's about it. That's our first tier list. If you guys have any questions, make sure you leave some comments in the comments, well, below. But until next time, I'm FranklinTurtz, and I've been your Internet Turtle. Stay turtly, stay awesome. I'll catch you in the next one. 1 hour, 15 minutes! Holy moly! That took way longer than it should have.